Snacks don't have to be complicated. You can make something quick using simple ingredients that the whole family will enjoy. Store-bought snacks have a bunch of preservatives and unwanted junk in them, and making them from scratch costs a fraction of the price. I'm always on the hunt for a new snack recipe, and these are some of my family's favorites. Let's get started with the snack my kids ate the fastest. These are sweet and chewy granola balls. I actually ended up making this recipe twice because as I was forming the balls, my kids were grabbing them quicker than I could make them. I start off by adding some oats to the bowl, and for a list of all the ingredients, check the description below. This recipe is perfect for a hot summer day because it requires no baking. I added about a tablespoon of cinnamon and some chocolate chips. You can really add as many or as few add-ins as you'd like. You could add nuts, you could add dried cranberries. Here I'm trying to get out a 1/4 cup of honey. Honey is important because it will be what binds all the ingredients together. For some added protein, I give it a sprinkle of hemp hearts. So that was probably about a tablespoon. And I'm also going to add some peanut butter. I like using crunchy peanut butter normally, but I only had creamy peanut butter this time. Nevertheless, it did the trick. This is a nice salty contrast to the sweet honey and chocolate. And I mean, who doesn't like peanut butter? So I take all those ingredients. I'm going to mix them together quickly, and then I'll sort of press them all into each other. This can take a bit of time, so just be patient. This is a no-bake recipe, and that's what makes it come together super quick. I also like that I don't really have to use a lot of plates or bowls or utensils. Less things to clean is always a win in my books. I'm taking this mixture and I'm just forming it into little balls. I actually wet my hands a bit first just so the honey and the peanut butter wouldn't stick to them so much. So I'm just gonna, run them over my hands in a circular pattern, whatever shape and size I would like. They're not all uniform and they're not all perfect, but that is perfectly fine. And I'll do that with all of it, and I realize I did not make enough because my kids start coming over and eating them. And these will be gone very quick, and that's why I make another batch soon after. But it's a quick process, super easy to make, and they're delicious, honestly. They're really good. I like to put them in the freezer for a bit afterwards just to let them firm up, and then they're ready for a quick snack when someone's feeling hungry. The next recipe I'm going to make is one of my kids' favorite recipes, and this is quite a refreshing snack. It's simple ingredients that you can normally find in your pantry. So I'm just gathering everything here. I have yogurt, I have some cherry syrup, I have maple syrup, and I will put it together all in a bowl, and then I'll transfer it into this dish. You could use kind of whatever shaped dish you want. Just make sure you put parchment paper down. We will be freezing this all, so it has to have sort of like an edge on the side or a lip. So I put some Greek yogurt in a bowl. I'm adding this cherry syrup. I made this last summer from cherries that we picked, and I didn't really put enough sweetener in it, so I added sugar to it, but it's not super sweet. It's quite tart. So I try to add it to sort of other dishes that I know I'll be adding some other sweet element. I also added some maple syrup, so it looks nice and pretty now from the cherry syrup. I'll transfer that all into this dish, and I'll try to get every last bit. Once I do that, I want to make it look pretty also because, for kids, it has to look appealing. So I'll just spread it out in a thin layer. It's not like super thin. It's probably about a 1/4 inch thick. And once I'm done that, I'm going to find some fruit to throw on top. So I had some strawberries that were in the freezer. They're frozen. I'll cut them into little pieces, and then I'm just going to sprinkle them on top. My kids also just love frozen snacks. Honestly, they could eat ice cubes all day long, but I don't think that's great for their teeth. They love frozen fruit. They love frozen vegetables. I don't know what it is, but as soon as you freeze something, it just becomes that much better. So there it is. It looks nice and pretty too. And I'm just going to pop this in the freezer. It won't take too long to fully freeze. The next recipe I'm going to make are some cheesy crackers. I make crackers fairly often at home. They're something that my kids go through really quick. I do buy crackers at the store sometimes as well. It's just, something that I can never keep up with, really. They're pretty easy to make and they use simple ingredients. I like to switch them up every so often. So sometimes I'll do, I don't know, different add ins to crackers. So this time I've decided to add some cheese just because that's what I had hanging around in my fridge. So I actually went to go put the baby down for a nap, and my son made a huge mess with the ingredients while I was doing that. I came back to flour all over my floor, and that just goes to show you that even if your ingredients are not perfectly measured, as mine no longer were, they still will turn out delicious. Certain things you don't need to be super accurate with the measurements, as long as you just kind of watch it when you bake it and keep an eye on that final product. Then, especially when you're using dough, there's a lot of flexibility for error. I'm shredding some cheese into the dough now. I'm using a variety of cheeses. I had a lot of extra Parmesan on hand. I think I forgot that I had some and bought an extra one at Costco. So I really had a large quantity that I needed to use. And I also added some mozzarella cheese too because I had just some left. I'm adding some oil. That was a light olive oil, and I added it because the oil will really help the edges crisp up afterwards, because you want your crackers to be nice and crunchy and not, gooey or chewy. They need to be crisp. I'm using a dough whisk here to mix all the ingredients together, and I highly recommend them. Next, I'll just put some flour down on the counter. Rolling out dough seems to be a family favorite activity. There's always someone who comes to join me for this process. I've gone through so many cracker recipes, and some of them have such a long list of ingredients, and those are never the ones that I tend to use. You want to make sure there's enough flour on all sides of the dough so that it does not stick, or it will make rolling it out very difficult, and you won't get a uniform shape to it. I usually do this in 2 batches, so I have now 2 pieces that I'll work with, and I'll put them on 2 separate pieces of parchment paper and then onto cookie trays. So my son got very excited that I just handed him one of the pieces of dough to work with. He is running to find himself a rolling pin so he could try to roll that out. It rolls out pretty easily. This is a pretty easy dough to work with. It doesn't spring back too much, but it will spring back some. So you want to sort of work quickly with it. I'll transfer it onto the parchment paper and then continue rolling it out. It's going to be something that I'm going to continuously fiddle with. That's what happens with a lot of, dough recipes, just because they do try to spring back, and the more time you give it, the more it will relax and stop trying to, fight with you and trying to go back to a smaller shape. For this one, I just sprinkled some sesame seeds on top, and then I just rolled on top of the dough so that I could press it in. Now I'm using a pizza cutter just to do some straight cutting. My lines are not completely straight. Nothing is completely uniform, and that is fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. As I cut it, each individual square will sort of shrink in shape and size. The last step, though, is to poke holes with a fork. You want to do that so that the air can escape, and that way it doesn't puff up and form a pocket. I'm going to place this in the oven, and then I'm going to get back to work. Someone really wanted to help me cut this dough. He was really excited to use the pizza cutter, and whatever gets my kids excited about the food that they're going to eat, I'm going to try to get them involved in. Sometimes just participating will encourage them to eat the food more, and therefore I'll allow them to, take part in the kitchen and learn from the process as well. It was also a matter of trying to keep him from cutting it more and more and more, so that I actually ended up with some crackers. Here's the final product, and my son can barely wait to try it. I turn away for a second, and even though the pan is still hot, he grabbed a cracker, and I was a little bit surprised now that we got our first couple of recipes done. We're moving on to what is more of a common recipe that people make for their kids, especially muffins. My kids love muffins, and today we are making banana muffins. I always have frozen bananas in the freezer. Or I shouldn't say always, often have frozen bananas in the freezer. And what I do is I just will pop them in the microwave real quick to defrost them so that I can get them out of their skin. And I'll use them to make muffins. I do like making banana bread too, but sometimes I'm in a bit of a time crunch and muffins cook a lot quicker. So I will opt to make muffins, even though it's a little annoying to clean the muffin trays afterwards. So here I'm just crushing up the bananas. I don't want to use any other, tools just because I'm trying to not dirty the kitchen too much. So here's 2 eggs that I'll crack into it. And I always love recipes that use, more than one egg. I always have a lot of eggs in my fridge. Here I'm adding 1, 2, and 3 bananas. These were bananas that had become overripe and I had just put them in my freezer. I let them defrost and then they were ready to use. I'm going to add some flour to this. Now, unfortunately, I was running out of flour that I keep in my pantry here. I do keep a large quantity of flour in sort of this like big barrel that I use just to store it. So I went and had to refill my jug. I don't know why, but I actually hate refilling my flour. I often ask my husband to do it for me. It's like I enjoy having all those staples on hand and in bulk, but unless they're directly in my kitchen pantry, I find it so annoying to have to go and get them downstairs or, in another room. Oh well, small price to pay, I guess, for having a well-stocked pantry. Here I added some baking powder, that was a teaspoon. Muffin recipes really come together so quick. The ingredients don't necessarily have to be added in any specific order, and it's not like making a cake or other baked goods where it's really important to follow the steps really closely and to like whip the butter and egg together before adding any other ingredients. They're much more forgiving than other baked products. I really do make muffins all the time, but they never really last long in my house. My kids get to them fairly quick, and if I make a small batch of just like 12 muffins, that will be eaten within the day, maybe even within the morning. Sometimes I'll double or triple the recipe, but I also find if I make too many of the same type of muffin, my kids get fed up with them. I know I could freeze them too, but there's nothing quite like a freshly baked muffin. Now, for the last recipe, I wanted to give my kids just a little treat, a nice summer treat to have with their snacks. So I decided to make some freshly squeezed lemonade. I had a lot of extra lemons. I think I made a mistake last time I put the grocery order through and I ordered way too many lemons. When you try to order single lemons or single products and you actually end up ordering bags instead. So that's what happened. I had a lot of lemons and I was like, hey, why not make some fresh lemonade? We never buy juice or lemonade or any sort of sweet drinks from the store. They're sort of reserved just for birthdays or, special events or holidays. So making lemonade at home was a really special treat for my kids. Also, 2 of my kids don't really like things that are overly sweetened. They prefer sour taste, so I thought lemonade would be the perfect treat. And it's so easy to make. Honestly, don't buy it at the store anymore. We don't need any of that added stuff to it. It's just such simple ingredients. Squeezed lemons, add some water, add some ice, and then sweeten it with something like maple syrup or honey for natural sweeteners. You could sweeten it with some sugar as well. That works. I just tried to keep it more on the natural side. For an added touch, put some strawberries in. Frozen ones work best because then it helps keep it nice and cold. It was delicious.